About 10 years ago there was a storm and flood on our French campground. The tent was flooding. Unsalvageable. Late at night. I was maybe 9. Car parked in front. Mom wanted to quit trying to save the tent and shelter in the car. Dad wanted to keep going, trying to save small bits of our stuff floating around. Mom had had enough after a few minutes longer in the freezing water and said back quote, "No, I'm gonna sit in the car with me." Mom and I zipped open the tent, exited, took one step towards the car, parked maybe 5 steps away. Then a massive tree fell over the entire length of the car and crushed it to scrap. Glass flew everywhere. Had my dad not protested and given in to Mom sooner, she and I could have been in the car and could have died a minute sooner and we would have been smashed to a mixture of metal and body parts. I've got 2 stories to share with you guys where I believe I got really lucky. They aren't hardcore dangerous, so I don't know if they are worth telling, but I will share my experience nonetheless. The first story happened fairly recently. I was having a trip outside on my bicycle. Now, I'm usually a very clumsy person, but when I'm running a bike I surprise myself being decently agile. So I fell off my bike in spectacular ways a lot in my life, and always got out unscathed for some reason. Now my town has really dangerous traffic, so I rarely ever drive on the road and I usually drive on the pavements and bike paths, if there is one, which is never. This time, I was crossing the road through a crosswalk, and the road had a split on the middle of both ways, for pedestrian to wait on. This split had fancy hedges, to make it look more rich looking, but those hedges were hiding a car from my sight, and hiding me from their sight. We ran into each other and collided. We weren't going very fast mind you, I'd say we were both going around 10 km/h. So the car bumped me, and started crushing my front wheel. I yelled in terror and ejected myself from the bike, doing some kind of messy tactical side roll while the car braked abruptly. The first thing I remember was scanning my own body to check if I was harmed, but I could move all my limbs and no unbearable pain anywhere. I just had one single bruise on my ankle. Once again, I had been lucky enough to come out unscathed. So lucky in fact that even my bicycle was fairly alright. We just had to change the front wheel that had been crushed, and I could roll the thing again. The second story happened a couple of years ago, when I ended up in the middle of a high school blockade conducted by the students there. They had blocked the school entrance with a wall of dumpsters, on which the leaders were standing on top, and yelling typical riot things. In front of those dumpsters were those kind of barriers, serving as a reinforcement. Now, I wanted to climb on the dumpsters to join them in their endeavor, being the dumb teen I was. Of course, they thought I was a foe and pushed me back immediately, which caused me to fall upside down, taking one of those barriers with me. Now, see these triangular dispatched rods as a supporting base for those barriers? Since I fell with my head going upside down, the barrier also fell head first, and one of these rods stabbed through my pants, perfectly parallel to my leg, and held me down like a brace. Now, not only did I get lucky not having one of these things crush or stab my leg in the first place, but I also realized the rod had stabbed on my crotch area and went down. This means that it went centimeters away from ripping my testicles apart. The whole thing is almost surreal how I got out unscathed. Got hammed with my father in a stoop of depression. He wanted me to go grab some broccoli from the grocery store, albeit knowing I was hammered. I decided to head to my mom's house that was just down some back roads and steal some from her fridge. She's a food hoarder, well an everything hoarder, so I don't feel so bad stealing something from her 10 refrigerators. While driving I decided I was going to try to be a race car driver in a car Rio. Needless to say, that didn't go over too well hammered. I ended up slamming into a tree going about 60 miles per hour. My head went through the windshield, but I was saved by the engine being pushed into the driver's seat, making my foot effectively work as an anchor, preventing me from being launched from the car. I somehow made it out of the car and collapsed in the road with a concussion and a broken foot. A neighbor found me lying in the middle of the road after hearing a huge boom. I learned my lesson and never drank and drove again. Now I have a loving girlfriend and an 11-month-old little girl that my stupid decisions could have deprived me of. I'm a highly unlucky person, probably because I used all my luck up with my I survived story. After I was certified as a paddy diver I booked a trip I was on a live aboard on the Great Barrier Reef. Another diver and I, also new, were following a ridge of coral and we realized we were a little deeper than planned. We were at 70 feet depth. Not critical but still deeper than planned. We signaled that we should start heading up and back to the boat. I checked my air and the gauge indicated 1/2 a tank. I signaled my buddy and she indicated 1/2 a tank. We started back and not 3-minute mutes in my regulator start drawing hard. Really hard. I looked at my gauge and it read no air. 0. It's amazing how fast things run through your mind. First thought. I'm 5,000 miles from home, 70 feet from the surface and out of air. I'm gonna die. Next thought was I can rocket to the surface, likely hurt myself, but I'll be alive. Next thought, my buddy has air, grab the alternate and go up. The latter is what I did. I'm alive, obviously, and still diving. I learned a lot early on and have gone on to record over 300 dives around the world. I crashed into a moose when I was driving to visit my girlfriend. A few years ago, I'm driving along the highway at night, about 3 hours into an 8-hour drive. I noticed something on the side of the road, so I slow down a bit. Suddenly this moose charges out from the ditch. I smash into its head with my car and I start spinning out. While this is happening, my mind is filling with stories about how moose accidents rarely end well, so naturally, I start freaking out. Thankfully, since it was pretty late into the night, there wasn't any traffic. Somehow, I managed to stop spinning out and managed to park neatly on the side of the highway. Even crazier, the only thing that happened to me was whiplash, and I even managed to drive my car to my intended destination. I was at intensive care for 11 days after a severe surgery. They fucked up my painkiller scheme and practically overdosed me every day. I was getting too many pills for my weight. Because I was often barely conscious, I didn't eat enough, causing me to lose weight fast, which made the problem even worse. It ended with the doctor getting rid of all the pills all of a sudden, which led to a delirium tremens. I was seeing shadows coming out of the wall etc. and was convinced the nurses wanted to kill me lol. I've never been so scared in my entire life. The day after, one of the nurses told my parents I had cried for 8 hours straight that night. I can't really recall that, but I still recall how I legit thought I was gonna die there. When I was 4 years old, I had WPW syndrome. Google it if you don't know what it is. It's heart disease. We live in Georgia, country in Caucasus, so back in that time medicine was not that good, so we had to travel to Berlin to get ablation. Unfortunately, my family didn't have enough money to pay for the ablation, so the HZB hospital helped us. Thank you, Dr. Ovroutsky, for everything you have done for me and my family. Without you I wouldn't be there, writing this reply. I was riding my bicycle in New York City high on amphetamines, clean and sober for 3 years now, and for whatever reason decided to abruptly turn left, across traffic without looking. I ended up hitting the right front wheel of a lorry. Had I turned a second earlier I would have been a slab of flesh and bones, to be scraped off the road by paramedics. Luckily it didn't turn out that way. For a couple years afterwards I had, not what I would term flashbacks, but something similar where my mind would go back to the moment, think about how close I was to death and freak out a little. Appendix ruptured. Last image before waking up once again was my mom holding my hand as I was being carried off towards the operation room. That image still haunts me, the fact that I was so close to death. Just to qualify, my appendix ruptured either at home or before surgery. I don't remember, to be fully honest. Previous posts about it may be inaccurate. Everything felt peaceful, though I feel horrified upon thinking back on it now. The fact that I could have died and lost everyone and everything is just horrible. I was on a snowmobile ride a couple years ago and misjudged an exit off of a river onto the lake. Hit something under the snow that sent me flying off the sled. Sled went down into the river and I landed on the ice, which broke when I landed. When I went through, my momentum carried me under the ice away from the hole I went through. There I was in full sledding gear, helmet and all, trying my damnedest to swim, but only sinking because of the weight of the gear and not able to find the hole I went in. I had pretty much accepted that this is where I'm gonna die, and images of my then 1-year-old daughter and wife were rushing through my head. When I hit the bottom of the river I pushed off, and through some miracle, came up through the hole I went in. Around that time, The two friends I was riding with had noticed that I disappeared and came back and pulled me out of the water. It was a frigid ride back to civilization at -28°C, but I survived it. I'm more careful now. I got fished out of the ocean twice. The first time was surfing when I was 14. I had a particularly nasty wipeout. When I came up, my surfboard knocked into my head, knocking me unconscious. When I came to, I gasped for air and only inhaled salt water. I swam trying to figure out which place was up because I couldn't see. After struggling, I couldn't figure it out and passed out again, not being able to breathe. Then I was suddenly laying on the beach with my friend standing over me. She explained that she fished me out and that the rip was gnarly. I don't remember most of that summer. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more daily 6 PM Reddit uploads.